Probably would have DNF'd also if it wasn't a NetGalley e-arc, being honest. And it's just not my taste. I don't like it. You know how it can feel really defeating seeing all of the terrible shit going on in the world? Father dies and she's like, cool, I don't have to do all this dumb shit anymore. Well, hello, welcome back to my channel. Just Shauna here to talk about some friggin' books. The last couple of books that were on my reading tracker for 2024 that I haven't talked about yet. Also, I cut my hair and I'm loving it. So, yay, love that for me. All right, there's only 4 to talk about and it's just kind of the stragglers. There's nothing that I loved. There's a DNF. And the first one is actually a nonfiction that took me a good long while to read. Took me like a month to read. Hope in the Dark by Rebecca Solnit. And this, how would I describe this? You know how it can feel really defeating seeing all of the terrible shit going on in the world and all of the good fights being fought and the protests and the people organizing to try to change things, and then it seems like things just don't change, and that just kind of defeating feeling that can happen. This is a good book for kind of fighting that and perspective. It's been around a while. I want to say since the early 2000s. I believe it was after 9/11 when the peak anti-Muslim shit was going on in the US and all the propaganda that had everyone all bomb the Middle East and shit. And this author just saw what was happening, and that is when she initially wrote this book. It has been, I don't know if it's been re-edited or changed at all. It has been like republished since then, and it's as timely as ever. And yeah, I just appreciated the perspective basically of, I guess for me, it was kind of just an overall message of hope works in tandem with that sense of defeat. But as long as you keep fighting, that's hope. That is having hopefulness. Hopefulness is not thinking everything is going to be absolutely perfect and everything's going to go your way and things will change exactly how you want them to change. That isn't necessarily hope, because if you think that and you only are going to keep fighting, if you get that, then you won't have hope. You will get very defeated and you'll quit, you'll give up. When you give up on whatever it is in your life, in general, that is when like you don't have any hope. And it was just a collection of kind of different situations throughout our kind of more recent history and how things did change. Maybe sometimes in small ways, maybe sometimes in big ways. I do think it's interesting too, though, that some of the stuff the author pointed out being like positive changes admittedly have gotten worse since then. But I don't know, I just appreciated that message. Kind of trying to not let the defeatism win, I guess. So I thought it was good for that. The next one was a DNF. This was a random Christmas thing. I think it was on Kindle Unlimited that I saw, called Hello Stranger by Katherine Center. And I only got 8% into this. The premise is a young woman who, God, did I read it? I mean, I only read 8%, so I barely remember it. Something happens, and does she become blind? She's like in an accident. Yeah, and she becomes blind. And she's an artist. And then something about she's painting faces. I don't know. There's a romance. It's a rom-com type of thing. Holiday, contemporary romance. And the authorial voice was just feeling a little bit too, look how quirky and irreverent I am. I'm just so quirky. Gosh, can't believe this is happening to me. That kind of thing that I tend to find in a lot of contemporary romance, and it's just not my taste. I don't like it. And I just was not getting any traction at all with the story or characters. I just was not caring in the slightest. So I figured, why waste my time? This one I did talk about in the video that went up today, actually, my like least faves, lowest rated, etc. But I haven't talked about it in a recent wrap up, and that is The Rainfall Market by Yeong-Gwang. And this is a translated work. It was originally published in Korean, and I thought it was adult, and it is not. It is like young adult, if not middle grade. It very much, the tone of it felt very middle grade-ish to me, so I would say young, like younger leaning young adult, if not middle grade. The synopsis, I'll just read from Storygraph. No one is more surprised than Saren when she receives a ticket inviting her to a market that opens once a year when it rains. Here she's offered to swap her life for another, a better one. The problem? She has 1 week to find the perfect life and true happiness, or she'll be trapped inside the market forever. Accompanied by Isha the cat, Saren searches through bookstores, hair salons, and perfumeries before time runs out, all while a shadow follows quietly behind them. So yeah, it's this little girl. She's a preteen or teenager, and she hates her life. She's living in poverty. It's just her and her mom. She has a sister who ran away like months, if not like a year before or something, a while ago. No one knows where she is, what happened to her, whatever. And this is very like magical realism feeling, kind of, but for me it just kind of felt more like fantasy. It didn't feel, I don't know. I guess I'm not the most well-versed with magical realism, but for me, usually magical realism comes along with an authorial voice that's very like, up in the clouds, what's even real? Whereas this didn't have that at all. It definitely had kind of Studio Ghibli vibes, I would say. I also am not very well-versed with Studio Ghibli movies and such. I have only ever seen My Neighbor Totoro a bunch of times when I was a kid. I fucking loved that thing. But I never watched any of the other ones, but like, I know the vibes. I see the aesthetic. I hear the way people talk about it and whatever. This had those vibes, but it ended up just feeling too young. Like, I think maybe if I had known it was gonna read that way, or that it was, I don't know if it's actually categorized that way, but I definitely would. And if it is, and I saw that, I wouldn't have requested it from NetGalley. It was a NetGalley e-arc that I read, but I didn't know, and I probably would have DNF'd also if it wasn't a NetGalley e-arc, being honest. I just was trying to not keep DNFing NetGalley arcs, so I pushed through, and I said in the other thing too, take my opinion with a grain of salt as well, because there were sections that I skimmed a bit because it started to feel very repetitive. Once she's in the market, like it was all very cool and fun and like, ooh, what is going on here? And like fantastical and kind of fairy tale-ish. And then she starts going, she goes to like 6 or 7 different like shops to look for the future or the life that she wants. And they're in like these little orbs. And so you have to go to these shops and like buy something, and then you can pick an orb. But she kept, like at every shop, she had to do like a challenge or a puzzle or help the shop owner with some little mini quest or something. And it just felt very formulaic and repetitive a bit. And it just wasn't exactly to my taste. So I ended up giving it 3 stars. I can see the appeal if you're signing up for this, if this is like, any of these buzzwords sound fun to you, and if you go into it knowing kind of the tone of it and that it's going to read a little younger, I could see a lot of people really enjoying it, but for me it was just a very middle of the road 3 stars. And then the last thing that I completed in 2024, finished it on December 30th, and it was a little bit of a bummer. I talked about this as well in the kind of least fave video. The Crimson Road by A.G. Slatter. This is part of a companion series. The only other book I've read from it is Briar Book of the Dead, and I really enjoyed that. There's also The Path of Thorns and something else that I can't remember. I haven't read those. I might someday. However, this one, I thought I was gonna really like this one because it's dealing with vampires. They're called leeches in this world, and the lore is slightly different. But I thought I was really going to dig it. The synopsis, once again, well, I'll read the little blurb thing. A captivating dark gothic fantasy set in the same universe as the award-winning author blah 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 blah. A Tale of Vampires, Assassins, Ancient Witches, and Broken Promises. Perfect for readers of Alex E. Harrow, Hannah Witten, and Alexis Henderson. So yeah, it's our main character, Violet, basically is raised, not totally her whole life. Her mother dies in childbirth when she is young, like I want to say she's like 7 or something like that. And after that, her father just trains the shit out of her to go on some mission someday, something dealing with her mother's death and a deal that he made. Okay, some like nefarious deal with a demon type of thing that he doesn't really give her information about, but he makes her train like to fight and all this shit. And so she's like a little assassin herself, essentially. And then her father dies and she's like, cool, I don't have to do all this dumb shit anymore. And he was like abusive as well. Definitely some content warnings for this. Content warnings for parental like abuse. At one point, he kind of tries to kill her. And I mean, parental death as well. Her mother, I mean, and her dad, but she didn't really care about that. And just death in general. There's like a lot of murder and death and whatever. Blood for sure, because there's, you know, vampires drinking blood. There's not a shit ton of that, but there's some. And also infertility for sure. And abortion and kind of like a forced abortion. No choice 'twas made. But yeah, so content warnings for all that stuff. Her dad's terrible. And so yeah, he dies and she's like, cool, I don't have to do this shit. And they used to be poor, but when her mother died and he made some deal with somebody in some fashion, they got all this money. And she can't keep this money and all their holdings and everything unless she completes this mission that he set out for her. And she's fucking pissed about it and she's kind of like, I'm not going to do it then. But then she learns more about how in this world, the leeches, the leech lords, they are kind of sequestered off in one area and they're held in this area by magic. And it's the family of witches we meet in Book of the Dead, Jesus Christ. The Briar witches, they're the ones that like hold that like magical boundary in place. And our main character here, Violet, gets word that there might be some plans by some leech lords to somehow get rid of that barrier and like basically flood the world and kill everybody. So she's like, fine, fucking I'll go. And then we're off on a quest. And that's kind of, I think, the biggest reason it didn't hit right for me. It started off really strong, but quickly started to feel like it was kind of all over the place and meandering. It was like, it felt like it didn't know what it wanted to do for a good portion of the book. Also, I'm totally fine with authors, you know, taking like vampires, but kind of making it their own and like changing the, you know, standard canon vampire lore. Because what even is that? There's so many iterations of it, right? And she did, and I don't mind like it not being normal vampire lore, but my problem was there were a few things that kind of didn't make sense logically. Like they didn't add up. The explanation doesn't really make sense, or we just don't get an explanation. Also, something that it stuck out to me and I couldn't unnotice it and unsee it, and it happened so many times. At the end of a chapter, our main character would get knocked out or faint or have just been in a fight and pass out from loss of blood. Like so many chapters ended with her like closing her eyes and fading to black. And oh, she looked up and saw something hitting her in the head and then she passed out, just over and over again. I was like, oh my God, can we stop doing this, please? And just the way that her backstory, Violet's backstory, was explained, and there's another character, a young girl that kind of hangs out with her, and like the way her backstory was explained, it just felt a little wonky and clunky, I guess. I don't know, not like what the backstory was, but just the way that we like exposed the backstory throughout this story, it just felt weird. I don't know. And yeah, I don't really have that much else to say about it. I really wanted to love it a lot, but I think mostly it was just the questy thing made it feel way too meandering for me, and I'm just not the biggest fan of that. Like we go to this place and oh, action, quest, adventure, mission to complete. Okay, we completed that. Now we're gonna hang around here for a few days and like dilly-dally. And then, oh, I guess we should get back on our quest. And it kind of did that a couple of times and it just didn't really work for me. So I ended up giving this one 2.75 stars, which is my like middle of the road minus. It's like 3 minus. And that is it. Those are the last 4 books I had to tell you about from 2024. So far in January, I've completed 2 books. and I'm about to complete another one, and yeah, we're doing good. And so far, the books I have completed have been at least 4 stars. And the one that I'm reading right now that's a reread is definitely going to still be like 4.5. And there's another one that I'm reading right now that I don't know if it'll be quite a 4, but it's positive. So we're off to a good start for January for 2025. Love that for me. Ended 2024, like actually ended, the actual last couple of things I finished were a little but in December I had, the first law, so that was a 10 out of 10 experience. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.